Hi there, this is RimWorld. Well, RimWorld Anomaly to be more specific. And this is you. Well, you're colonist to be more specific, but you're not some brand new player who's still wet behind the ears. No, you've been here for quite a while, haven't you? Hey, and look at that, you even have your own base. Way to go, champ, good job. I mean, it's kinda shabby and shitty, but still, it's a base. There's just one teeny tiny problem. You've been messing around with ancient cosmic horrors that are beyond human comprehension. Classic. And now these fleshy little meat monsters want to eat your colonist alive. Now, it's important to mention that these flesh beasts come in many shapes and sizes, but the most common of which that you'll be facing are the finger spikes, tri-spikes, and the tough spikes. Thankfully for now, to begin with, you'll only be taking on some of the weaker ones like the finger spikes, so you really shouldn't have any issue defeating the first wave or so of these little fleshy bastards. But with that being said, there is still the issue of the massive hole in the ground that will continue spawning these disgusting monsters. You do, however, have the option to enter said hole, though, in an attempt to close it, possibly your only attempt to close it, to be honest with you, but the one question remains, what is it exactly that you'll be taking with you into said hole? Now, as mentioned, you've been here for a while, you're no newbie, so you have a few weapons saved up in your storage room. If you're really lucky, you may even have some Juggernaut serum, but you're not, so you don't. Well, regardless of that though, you decide to go with a Hellcat rifle, Molotov cocktails, and an incendiary launcher. An excellent choice, I might add. For you see, my friend, the flesh beasts are extremely flammable. Each of the three that I had mentioned earlier actually have a flammability rating of 125%, and none of them have any armor protection against heat at all. So, now that you have the proper firepower, or at the very least, the best firepower that you can muster given the circumstances, it's time to go into that giant pit in the ground and face your fears. I will say that you should be prepared to lose at least one colonist, especially if you're not going down there with, I would say, at least about 6 to 8 colonists who are pretty well armed. Which you're not, because you only have 3 colonists. Regardless though, you decide to try your hand, even with the odds stacked against you. Your colonists descend via rope straight into the gaping mouth of hell itself. If hell is a squishy, liquefied ball pit that's in the middle of a cave, and by squishy and liquefied, I mean fleshy, muscly meat. After entering the caverns, you spot some literal walls made out of said flesh. Disgusting in nature, so you decide to start shooting them and tearing through them like a bulldozer on Adderall. The entire cave system is covered in these fleshy walls, so it's going to take you quite a while to actually dig, scrape, and tear through them all. So I hope you decided to pack your colonists plenty of food. It's also worth noting that I am actually using the simple sidearms mod here in this video, meaning I can keep several weapons on each colonist, but this isn't required, of course, to go down in here and start tearing up some fleshy shit. It does, however, make it much easier, as well as much more enjoyable, I'll say. For the most part though, your time down here hasn't been too bad. It's actually been quite easy to tear apart these fleshy structures, and you meet minimal resistance from the creatures within. You are one lucky dog, because this flesh beast lair could have been much worse. Those that do decide to oppose you down here meet a swift burning end at the hands of your flaming weaponry. Truthfully, a much better fate than they would have actually offered to you or your colonist up top on the surface. After you're done slaughtering more of these abominations of the universe, you decide to continue with your quest of trying to destroy as much of the flesh mass as you can to try and find some type of way to fully defeat it and cause a collapse of the lair. And everything is going great. Until it's not. You, my foolish friend, have just awoken the big daddy of this meaty, blood-soaked cave system, a creature known as the Dread Meld. Basically, it's a big flesh monster made from a bunch of tiny flesh monsters, and it is super pissed that you've been killing its babies. And I really hope that you save some fuel in the old Hellcat rifle, because shit is about to get real. Now, the Dread Meld might be quite frightening to you, but it's just as flammable flammable as its little baby fleshy creatures, which is great for us because we're a one-trick pony, of course. And your colonist fire shall cleanse this place of its inhabitants. It is extremely crucial that you remember, though, that the Dread Meld has a very special passive ability. Whenever it takes a certain amount of damage, it will actually spawn smaller flesh beasts from its surface, almost as if your damage is tearing it apart. Another little pro tip here is that if you create a little wall of fire between you and the Dread Meld, it will be injured when it tries to go back through it. Most of the time, in my experience at the very least, when attacking the Dread Meld after a certain amount of damage is done, it will try to keep its distance for at least a hot moment. No pun intended, of course. And if you have a brain rattling around in that skull of yours, you'll realize that this is an ample opportunity to try and heal your colonist, at least for a moment. Or perhaps even a good time to throw down a turret if you were to have one. Because don't look now, but that ungodly amalgamation of hamburger meat is coming right for you. Make sure to try and keep as much distance as you can, only focusing on ranged attacks, especially those that include fire, even if you have to sacrifice your turret. It's very important that you keep the pressure on the beast, burning it or shooting it at every chance you get, especially if your colonists are injured or just in general running low on sleep or food, which they almost definitely are after hours of fighting in a cave. After you've been damaging the Dread Meld for quite a while, to the point that it's about to die, you need to be sure to leave plenty of space between it and your colonists, which, to be fair, is much easier said than done, given that this is a very dense cave. Well, that's unfortunate. Nothing a little fire can't clean up, though. It's also important to remember that when trying to clean up your mess with the fire, you should try not to catch your friends on fire with the monsters. Remember, killing the Dread Meld also makes the pit system unstable, but you still have several hours before it actually collapses. So as long as at least one of your colonists isn't bleeding out, you should have enough time to rescue the others, assuming they don't die. But that doesn't end up happening because you are quite the little heroic savior. Yes, you are, aren't you? Once you've finally rescued your friends and you've finally gotten them to safety above, it's best to immediately begin tending to them to ensure they don't die anytime soon. Once that process is finally completed, you could choose to stay with them above ground, or you could go back into the cave, grab any weapons or other items you dropped, unless most of them burn up like mine. You could also try your hand at digging through some of these very large flesh sacks in the hopes that you find something useful. Sounds gross, and, well, it is, but you can get some decent resources and or items from them if you were to do so. Just make sure whatever you do, you're not inside the pit when it finally collapses in on itself. Otherwise, you'll be crushed, smothered, or even eaten to death by the remaining flesh beast within. But my friend, just like that though, you made it. You beat the flesh monsters and their gross hole in the ground, and you managed to do it with a teeny bit of severe bleeding. You are officially a RimWorld champion. Congratulations.